You're sitting on your front porch, watching the sunrise paint golden streaks across fields that have fed your family for 8 decades. That coffee in your hands? It tastes like home because this is home. Every fence post, every weathered barn board, every memory carved into this sacred ground. My great-grandfather came back from World War II with nothing but determination and a dream. He bought this land in 1943 for $800 money he'd saved penny by penny. With his own calloused hands, he built our first barn using wood salvaged from an old schoolhouse. You know those moments that define a family? Mine happened right here. Dad teaching me to milk cows at dawn. Mom reading stories in the hayloft during thunderstorms. And Grandpa, even at 90 years young, still taking his morning coffee on this same porch, watching over the land like a gentle guardian when Mom and Dad passed 5 years ago. There was never a question about what would happen to this place. You don't sell your soul. That's exactly what this farm represents, the very soul of our family. But the world around us was changing fast. Developers swept in like a tide, erasing farmland and replacing it with identical houses lined up like dominoes. Before we knew it, we were surrounded by a sprawling subdivision, complete with their own homeowners association. To them, our farm wasn't a legacy, it was an inconvenience. It began innocently enough. Well, I thought it was innocent. The first letter arrived on a Tuesday morning. Crisp and official looking with that HOA letterhead stamped across the top like a warning. My hands actually shook as I read it. Dear property owner, your agricultural activities do not conform to established community standards. I remember laughing. It's actually laughing out loud. Community standards? My family had been part of this community since before these folks were even born. But the laughter died pretty quickly when the letters kept coming. One every few days, each one more demanding than the last. Livestock odors affecting property. Values ... double quotes unsightly farm equipment visible from community areas ... double quotes immediate compliance required ... double quotes. Then came the day that changed everything. I was fixing a section of fence when I heard car doors slamming. 3 people walked up my driveway like they owned the place. 2 men in pressed khakis and a woman with a clipboard held like a weapon. The woman stepped forward with one of those smiles that never reaches the eyes. Mr. Thompson, I'm Carol Henderson, HOA president. We need to talk. About what? I asked, though my stomach was already sinking. Well, she said, glancing around like she was appraising livestock, your property has been problematic for our community. We're prepared to make you a very fair offer to relocate. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. This farm isn't for sale. Her smile grew sharper. Mr. Thompson, I don't think you understand your situation. You're completely surrounded by HOA-managed property now. That gives us certain ... leverage. We can make things very comfortable for you if you cooperate, or very uncomfortable if you don't. Standing there in the shadow of the barn my great-grandfather built, hearing strangers threaten to take away everything my family had worked for, I felt something break inside me. But it wasn't defeat, it was determination. Friends, what happened next was like something out of a nightmare. These people declared war on our way of life. First came the fake violations. Every morning, I'd find new notices nailed to my fence posts. Illegal signage for the hand-painted farm stand sign. Dad made in 1987. Noise violations for our rooster crowing at sunrise. Zoning infractions for parking my tractor in my own barn. Then they brought in the county inspector, a good man named Bill, who'd known our family for 20 years. He showed up looking embarrassed and frustrated. Tom, he said, shaking his head, they're calling my office 3 times a day with complaints. But I've got to tell you, legally, you're bulletproof. Your farm predates all their rules. You're what we call grandfathered in. That word grandfathered would become more important than I ever imagined. But they weren't done. Not by a long shot. HOA security started parking at the end of my driveway, blocking delivery trucks. They hired landscapers to cut down hedgerows that had been growing for 40 years. claiming they were community property. When I confronted the workers, they just shrugged. Lady with the clipboard told us to do it, mister. We're just trying to make a living. The breaking point came at the monthly town hall meeting. I sat in that stuffy room, listening to Carol Henderson present their formal petition to seize my land through eminent domain. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. This underutilized agricultural property, she announced to the packed room, would better serve the community as recreational space. A nice park for families to enjoy. Underutilized. This land that had fed families, provided jobs, sustained life for 8 decades, was underutilized? I stood up, my legs trembling. That land has been in my family since 1943. It was here before your houses, before your swimming pools, before your perfect little lawns. You can't just erase history because it doesn't fit your vision of the perfect neighborhood. Some people clapped. Others muttered. But Carol and her board just sat there with these smug expressions, like they'd already won. That's when I felt a gentle hand on my shoulder. Grandpa had been sitting quietly in the back row, listening to everything with those sharp blue eyes that had seen 90 years of life. Now he was standing, reaching for his walking cane. Son, he said quietly, I think it's time these folks met the real owner of that farm. You have to understand something about my grandfather. At 90 years old, he wasn't just the oldest person in that room, he was the smartest. While everyone else was arguing about feelings and fairness, Grandpa had been quietly doing his homework. He walked slowly to the front of the room, each tap of his cane echoing like a heartbeat. The murmuring died down as people realized something important was happening. Carol looked annoyed. Sir, we're in the middle of official proceedings. If you'd like to speak, you'll need 2, young lady, Grandpa interrupted, his voice carrying the authority of 9 decades. I've been listening to you talk about stealing my family's land for the better part of an hour. Now it's my turn. He reached into an old leather satchel and pulled out a manila folder, so worn it looked like it might crumble. But inside those yellowed pages was pure legal gold. This farm, Grandpa announced, his voice filling every corner of that room, was purchased and protected under the Agricultural Preservation Act of 1947. That means it's designated permanent farmland, immune from residential development interference. You could have heard a pin drop. Carol's face went pale. That's an old law. Surely it doesn't, furthermore, Grandpa continued, spreading the documents on the table like he was laying down a royal flush. This property was granted historical designation in 1963. Any attempt to seize it isn't just illegal. Under state law, it's a federal offense. The room erupted. People were whispering, pointing, some even applauding. The HOA board looked like they'd seen a ghost, but Grandpa wasn't finished. He leaned on his cane and looked directly at Carol, speaking in the quiet tone that somehow carried more weight than any shout. Ma'am, my grandson tried to be polite. He tried to reason with you. But you mistook kindness for weakness. This land has been feeding families and supporting this community since before you were born. My great-grandson will farm this land and his children after him, long after your HOA is forgotten. He paused, letting that sink in. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to take your threats, your fake violations, and your eminent domain nonsense. And you're going to leave my family alone. Because if you don't, my next conversation won't be with your little board, it'll be with the federal prosecutor who handles heritage land. Violations. Carol Henderson, the woman, who'd terrorized us for months, couldn't find a single word to say. Friends, I wish I could tell you the HOA slunk away that night, never to be seen again. But real life doesn't work like the movies. They tried to save face, muttering about misunderstandings and promising to review the documentation, but the damage to their reputation was already done. Word travels fast in small towns, and by the end of the week, everyone knew how the mighty HOA had been brought low by a 90-year-old farmer with a leather folder full of truth. 3. Board members resigned within a month, embarrassed by the whole fiasco. Carol Henderson moved to Florida, whether from shame or just coincidence, I'll never know. And the harassment? It stopped completely. But the real victory wasn't legal, it was personal. 2 weeks later, I was sitting on our front porch with Grandpa, watching the sunrise paint those familiar golden streaks across our fields. The coffee tasted better than it had in months. "Grandpa," I said, "I don't know how to thank you for saving our farm." He chuckled, that same gentle laugh I'd been hearing my whole life. "Tommy, I didn't save a farm. I saved a piece of our family's soul. This land isn't just dirt and crops. It's every sunrise your great-grandfather watched while building something bigger than himself. It's your dad learning the value of hard work. It's your mom finding peace in the rhythm of the seasons." He paused, taking a slow sip of his coffee. "And someday, God willing, it'll be your children learning that some things in life are worth fighting for. Not because they're valuable, but because they're irreplaceable." As I sit here today, watching my own grandson chase chickens in the same yard where I played as a boy, I understand exactly what Grandpa meant. This isn't just a story about an HOA trying to steal a farm. It's about the courage to stand up for what matters, the wisdom to know your rights, and the power of family legacy. Sometimes the bullies seem bigger than they really are. Sometimes the fight seems impossible. But if there's one thing our family learned that day in the town hall, it's that truth has its own power, and sometimes that's all you need. The farm is still here. The sunrise still paints those fields gold every morning. And that coffee on the front porch? It still tastes like home.